If you want to skip ahead to the build video, you can go right ahead and click here. The reason why I've been gone for the past couple weeks is real simple. Life happened. As much as I love doing this and creating content, my loved ones and healthy friendships always come first. And I really enjoy channels that one can relate to because it's definitely not all fun and games behind the videos that I make. So yeah, that's basically what happened this past month. It's been real rocky with my girlfriend, so we just wanted to drop everything and escape for a little and see if we could fix what we were faced with. It's pretty tough to stay motivated in school and focus on projects when other very important aspects in my life aren't doing so well. I'm not going to go into detail, but for the most part, things are looking really good and my mind is where it needs to be. I actually work in the design department where I get to train and help all the incoming students eager to study industrial design or interior architecture. And being a shop assistant has really helped to keep my mind off the bad and just stay busy, and at the same time, I get to meet a lot of really awesome individuals, and it really reminds me of when I started the program 5 years ago. It's so cool to see students that are seriously just like deathly afraid of power tools, and then in a week's time they're making some badass projects. To see a student go from a concept sketch, realize the shit that they've gotten themselves into, adjust, and execute the final design is one of the most satisfying feelings. Like my friend here, for example, she's an interior architecture student that had to design a lamp inspired by a movie. And in the process, she learned how to use the manual mill and some basic circuitry, and she pulled it off really well. It's a win-win for me, I get to help students, and sometimes they return the favor with food in the end. So yeah, with that being said, a nice clean shop is waiting to get dirty. My name is Pat, and this is the Lowdown Chair. You can all thank my main man Sumner for this project. I almost didn't want to do this video because the build requires more machines than usual, but it's definitely not impossible though if you don't have them. The first chair was actually made out of Philippine mahogany, but this time around I'll make it out of 5/4 thick beech. One thing I picked up early on in design school and just life in general is to work smarter and not harder. We have a laser cutter in the department, so I made some templates out of acrylic, and these will be used in tandem with a router to help speed up the process of cutting out all the parts. But you can very easily use a jigsaw or a bandsaw to cut everything out. In the description, you'll find a link where you can download the templates so you can get cracking on your own lowdown chair. Here I'm just laying out all the templates onto the board to get an idea of how many parts I can nest, and I'm going to use double-sided tape to keep everything in place. Now we'll head over to the miter saw and cut the board down to a more workable size before we jump onto the bandsaw. It's pretty crazy. Oliver here has been with the design department since my dad studied design in the 80s, and I'm sure he's been around well before my dad too. For how old it is, it's actually the most accurate and reliable bandsaw in our shop. With all the rough cuts done, we're going to head back to my garage and use the router table to clean everything up. Using a trimming bit, we'll make quick work of what was left behind after the bandsaw, and we'll just repeat this process for all the parts. Again, if you don't have a router table, you can easily cut all these parts out with a bandsaw or a jigsaw. It's just going to require a little bit more time. We'll glue up the 3 pieces for the backrest first, and one of the problems with the original chair was that I felt the backrest was too thin, so I beefed it up a little bit this time around and added another layer. Some areas were slightly offset, so I followed up with a spindle sander to clean up that inner curve and the disc sander on the outside to get all 3 layers lined up. With the other half of the board, we can get started on cutting the parts to make the seat. The board that I used was around 9 inches wide, so depending on the width of your board, you may need to join 2 to 3 parts to make the seat. The final size should be 17 by 14 when the parts are combined. I made reference lines 3 inches from the edge, and I'm going to use those to make sure that the pockets for the biscuits are lined up accurately. So I didn't realize this until I played back the footage, but I wasn't holding the joiner parallel to the surface. And it wasn't a big deal though, as I ended up making my own biscuits out of scrap that were slightly thinner than the pocket opening. After the glue has dried, we'll make a 5-degree cut on the 14-inch side of the seat to match the front angle of the legs. While this dowel jig is super handy, it's also super inaccurate. It's not quite centered anymore, and it's been dropped by students many times, but for the most part, it still works. I drilled 3 holes on each side of the seat, a couple drops of glue, and hammered in some 5/16" dowels. In these next few steps, we'll join the 3 parts that make up the side of the chair, as well as drill the corresponding holes for the seat dowels. These reference lines are purely eyeballed. I just made sure that there would be enough material to surround and support the dowels from all sides. And using that same janky dowel jig again, I drilled out the 2 holes. On the other part, those holes had to be slightly oversized in order to get the parts to line up properly and sit flush. And it's going to be the same process to join the side rail and the front leg. There's one clamp that runs from the top of the seat rail to the bottom of the leg, and one at a 45 to keep everything nice and tight. So this is actually one of those things I told myself I'd fix if I ever made this chair again. Parts usually join up at the end of a curve and not in the middle like this. And the reason why it's like this is because I really tried to maximize the number of parts I could fit on my board when I made the first chair, and I was able to do that by intersecting those curves. So yeah, totally goofed and did the same thing on this chair. Anyway, moving on. Using a 3/8 Forstner bit, I made the 3 corresponding holes for the seat dowels on the inside of the seat rails. And that's really it. I mean, from here you can apply glue to the sides of the seat and the backrest, clamp everything up, and call it a day. But then my buddy David, who's really into furniture design, super talented guy, pointed out that I should taper the chair. So I said, okay David, I got you. What we're gonna do is take off 1/2 inch on both sides. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's just enough to give it a noticeable taper. I cut a scrap board out of MDF and mounted it to the seat with double-sided tape, and we're basically just going to use this as a sled to cut the sides off. So tapering the chair also required adjusting the angle on the sides of the backrest, and in the download link below, you'll find a template for the squared off version as well as the tapered version. From this view, you can really see the taper in the rear. I mean, half an inch off both sides is pretty subtle, but it definitely gives the chair a little bit more personality compared to the original low-down chair that was squared off. Had to re-drill and re-dowel the seat, but I think in the end it was worth it, and now we can finally glue and clamp everything together. It's finishing work from this point. I've never worked with beech before, but next to walnut, it's probably one of my favorites. It sands super nice, it cuts like butter, the grain is really cool, and it's super cheap. You know, some hardwoods are just such a bitch to work with, but not this beech. And sometimes I just like to sand on the ground. I don't know what else to tell you guys other than try it out. So this is my friend Jocelyn. She's probably like, what, 90 pounds? The chair's looking pretty solid, right? And this is my good buddy Brian, 6 foot, just over 200. And this is where it broke. No, I'm kidding, we're straight. But now you get a good idea of just how low the low-down chair is. It looks like a kid's chair, but it's really comfy and the backrest angle is nice and relaxing. From the beginning, this chair was just a chain of mishaps. You know, somewhere along the way my math got screwed up and I cut the legs too short, which resulted in this low and planted stance, hence the low-down name. But I dig it. Hope you guys enjoyed that project, and I'm so sorry it took this long to get it out. Any comments or feedback you got for me, leave it down below. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.